right, so this team is called the Art of Subduction.
Why'd you say it like that?
No, just kidding. No, that's really okay. Okay, and the title of the presentation is Subductive S'mores, so take it away.
All right. I'm Nancy, this is Lena, Tom, and Sarah, and we're joined by some helpers. Is it Leah and Shelley? Thank you. And we are from Alaska. The four of us here are guides with Alaska Wildland Adventures. So you're all welcome to our campfire program this evening. And our purpose, just as the underground, we wouldn't say this to our guests, but we want you to understand your environment. We're on the Kenai Mountains in Cooper Landing, and yet feel safe in earthquake country. So our theme is that earthquakes are a major force in shaping Alaska's landscape, and studies of Alaska's earthquakes have taught us more about these forces and also how we can be safer. So,
we just want to start out by getting a show of hands. Who has experienced an earthquake before? Who has felt an earthquake in their home? Does someone want to share their experience with us?
This was awesome.
So a lot of people in this room have experienced an earthquake or felt an earthquake in some capacity. And Tom here is going to talk a little bit more about what makes an earthquake happen.
Hello, children. How are you doing tonight? Great. Got this handy-dandy little map here of the world. And it does have division of our tectonic plates, which make up our Earth crust. And on the back here, is a better definition of that. So we're going to go back to this side. This map also has a good area or a good showing of the various earthquakes around the world. And as you can see, we got a lot of them, whole mess of them up near us. And so what we have in this area is called subduction. And what we're having is the North American plate hanging out here, and then the Pacific plate is running into it right there. And what it is doing is it is climbing underneath it. What's that? So I have this nice s'more demonstration here. This is our graham cracker, and this is our s'more cracker, and this is the Pacific plate, and this is the North American plate. And what is happening is they are kind of colliding like that, but one is going underneath the other. But as you can see up here, it is forming mountains, and when that happens, it also makes earthquakes. So that's why we have so many earthquakes in our area.
okay. So yeah, we thought we could try that with the actual s'mores around the campfire. And if you don't have access to a fire and you want to do it in your classroom, like Leanne, we talked about just having the 2 graham crackers with chocolate frosting and little mini marshmallows on one, and that would be the Pacific plate, and then the plain graham cracker being the North American plate. And then the kids could have them subduct, and so the North American plate would, all the frosting and mini marshmallows would scrape off the Pacific plate onto the plain graham cracker, and then you could explain why the Kenai Mountains were formed.
We've done it with Oreos. We have them take the Oreos apart and then,
Scrape the frosting.
and plus we talked about delicious ooze, it's the frosting, but anyway, that's our regular shirt. But yeah, do that with the Oreos, so that's kind of the easy one. And then make gluten-free Oreos now.
Okay, so then just so we can understand these forces a little bit more when we talk about subduction or all these different ways that the plates collide, Sarah's got a little activity for us to explain those different forces that are at play.
That's right. So you can put your s'mores down just for a moment. We're actually going to stand up, and we're going to stand in a line. So we're doing this kind of we might be in a circle in our campfire, but a line works great.
Why don't you get on the other side of those?
On
our volunteers there?
Yeah. So this earthquake has happened. And to really understand what's going on, we're going to act out a primary wave, a secondary wave, and a surface wave. So the first thing I'm going to do, everyone put your hands up, and I'm going to touch each other, and I'm going to give Shelly a jolt, and when she feels the jolt, she's going to pass it on. And there goes Nancy. So everyone try that.
Start down here.
Earthquake.
Did you get in the middle?
So we'll try one more time. Everyone on my end of the room, start. Earthquake.
Earthquake.
So what you notice is this wave of energy moved pretty quickly. It pulsed through up to the surface of the Earth. And this might be the part of the earthquake where you get knocked over, your TV falls down, a vase breaks on the table. Okay, so your next stage of the earthquake, this is our secondary wave. So everyone put your hands up again. And when I start the earthquake, I'm just going to give Shelly a little shake. She's going to pass that on. So on this side of the room, everyone give a little shake. Okay, and so this shaking motion, it takes longer as it's moving through, and this is sort of, the ground is moving beneath you. And finally, we're going to have a surface wave. Okay, we're actually going to do the wave. So you can disconnect for a minute here. But in a really serious earthquake like we saw in 1964, the Earth actually moved, like a wave passed through the ground that people could see. So on my side of the room, we're going to do the wave. 1, 2, 3. Woo! And there it goes. And so we might have seen the ground actually move in a really serious earthquake like we saw back in 1961. So you can sit down and you can keep eating your s'mores. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Great. And we thought another add-on to that would be to actually time the lines so they could see how quickly a P wave passed in relation to the S wave or the. Okay. So these forces that Sarah just talked about, the P wave and the S wave and the surface wave, they have different levels of power, and that's what Lena's going to talk about.
So today we measure earthquakes using the moment magnitude scale that starts at 0 and theoretically can go up to 10. And this scale measures the amount of energy that's released by the earthquake. Generally, people can feel an earthquake that's a number 4 or greater. And so I'm going to do the pasta demonstration to show how the level of energy changes as the earthquake number increases. So, Shelly, do you want to come up? Not the pasta. All right, so Shelly, if I have this piece of spinach pasta here, and I'm going to hand it to you. And if you can go, we're going to say that this is a level 5 earthquake, because that's something that generally people can feel. So why don't you go ahead and break that one piece of pasta. Snap. So how was that to snap? Was it hard or easy? It was easy. So it's easy. So now we're going to move from a level 5 earthquake to a magnitude 6 earthquake. So I'm going to give Shelly 30 pieces of pasta.
That doesn't look like 30.
Come on. Don't be so literal. Use your imagination, children.
Shows up when
We
you
didn't
know
have
about
time to the store.
So Shelly, go ahead and try and break those pieces. Step. Oh my gosh, it's everywhere. So tell us a little bit about how that was compared to the one piece of pasta you broke.
It took more force. It was harder to do, and it broke in little pieces as I was doing it. So it wasn't like all at once.
So this demonstration showed us how, as we move from, let's say, a level 4 to a magnitude 4 to a magnitude 5 earthquake, or a magnitude 5 to a magnitude 6, the amount of energy releases increases by 30 times. And as we mentioned before, earthquakes are happening all the time, and even though we might not be able to feel them. And we have instruments that we use called seismometers to be able to measure earthquake activity that's happening around us that we may not be able to detect with our bodies. So Nancy here, Nancy here has downloaded a simple application, a seismometer application that shows, that detects, that can detect movement and energy released. And so if you guys can come over here.
And we're usually dealing with small groups, so they can sort of hover around the seismometer.
So if we look at our seismometer, we can see the really small undulations that's detecting the really subtle movements. But I'd like everyone on the count of 1, 2, 3, go to jump and look at our screen, and we'll see what happens, okay? 1, 2, 3, jump!
Wow!
So I don't know who can see that, but actually now that I pick it up, but it was a real flat line, and then that first, you see it? Okay. Siri, hi. Hi, Siri.
Dang it, Siri. Wow, woman.
No, it was really flat. Now that I'm moving around, it's jumping all around. But if you leave it flat on the ground, it'll detect those jumps. So, so to sum up what I talked about, there our modern earthquakes are measured on a moment magnitude scale, and we have tools like the seismometer to detect the magnitude of the earthquakes, even though we might not be able to feel them. And I'd just like to know who's felt a magnitude 5 earthquake before? Okay. So that was equivalent to Lena's example of breaking one piece of pasta. But actually in 1964 we had a magnitude 9.2 earthquake, which was 890,000 times the force of a magnitude 5 earthquake. Really huge. And that was here in Alaska. And Alaska is very special in the earthquake world because 4 out of 5 earthquakes in the U.S. occur in Alaska. And a magnitude 8+ earthquake can happen any day in Alaska, although we found that on average in the last 39,000 years, they've happened about every 600 years. So the last big one was 1964. I think hopefully we're good for a while. Alaska has 30,000 earthquakes per year, and Alaska averages a magnitude 5 earthquake each week. So Alaska is definitely on the earthquake map. And we have people, you shared a few of your stories earlier. I'd like to share now a few of the stories of first-hand accounts from that 9.2 magnitude earthquake that happened in 1964. And at this point, we found a website that has a lot of cool first-hand stories. We won't do that today. So these stories are not to scare you, but we just want you to appreciate the forces that have shaped these beautiful mountains that surround us here on the Kenai. And Sarah, do you want to close up with some words of reassurance?
Sure. So we do a lot of safety talks with our guests out in the field, and one thing I've never done a safety talk about is earthquakes, so we're excited to bring this back. And Leah had a great question for us, which is, what do you do if there's an earthquake when you're out in the woods? And there isn't a table to get under. And so we sort of decided that, your immediate reaction is going to be to drop down, cover up, and if there is time, you want to look up, and if you're underneath a really low-hanging tree, that's a bad place to be. If there's a really big boulder, a boulder that you can huddle up against so that it'll protect you if a tree is to fall, it'll be that barrier. And so talking a little bit about that, and where we are when we do our sharing campfires, we're on an outdoor patio with picnic tables, so we might just have to do a drop,
Where's your little thing?
cover, thank you, a drop cover hold-on drill that we've done here. And we are going to have these materials in our lodge now as well to sort of assist with, you know, that earthquake awareness, and it being the 50th anniversary of 1964, and we spend a lot of time driving around the Turnagain Arm, sort of reinforcing what we've learned about the devastating effects of earthquakes, and just the fact that they happen all the time is going to be a point we kind of hammer home, finish up with, not to scare everyone around them. Maybe we'll bring out more s'mores with this
We do have 3 lodges on the Kenai, and Sarah, what about our glacier lodge?
That's a great question, Nancy. So hope at this point we've probably talked about some of the other effects that came in 1964, one of which was tsunamis caused by these submarine landslides, I believe. And so our glacier lodge is located out in the Kenai Fjords National Park, and so if you are currently at that lodge, what you're going to want to do is run to high ground, because we know that big waves can be a very, in fact, the most traumatic effect in some cases.
And we do have safety supplies cached up in a high location. Thank you. It's been a great audience.